The story of Nafisa and the shape-shifting serpent. In a small village, deep in the valley where sunlight barely filtered through the cracks of old wooden windows, there was a humble house brimming with life. This was the home of Nafisa, a young girl who lived with her father and younger brother. Despite his old age and frailty, her father worked tirelessly doing small jobs to earn a living, while her brother, Suhail, was too young to help. The family relied entirely on Nafisa's sewing skills, and she was the sole hope for them in their poverty-stricken life. Nafisa was a talented seamstress, and the clothes she created were more than just ordinary handmade garments. Every stitch, every thread reflected the careful attention and meticulousness she poured into her work. The villagers, from the poorest to the most prominent families, praised her craftsmanship. It could be said that Nafisa's hands had kept her family alive through the years, and they were the only salvation when they struggled through hard times. In this village, there was a very wealthy family that owned the largest land in the region. The wife of the landowner, a noble and haughty woman, often ordered clothes from Nafisa. One more time, Nafisa received an order from this family, this time to make a dress for the landowner's wife. Though she was busy, Nafisa poured her heart into completing the work. She knew that this job wasn't just a way to make a living, but an opportunity to showcase her talent and establish a relationship with the influential people of the village. One evening, when her work was completed, Nafisa packed the clothes the landowner's wife had ordered and took them to her house. By the time she arrived, the sky had already darkened. An eerie feeling engulfed her, as if someone was watching her every step. The surroundings seemed to stand still, and the whispering wind made everything feel even more ominous. She knocked on the door, but there was no answer. Her footsteps echoed softly on the old stone pathway as she passed through the dark, long corridor of the old mansion. Finally, after a while, the landowner's wife appeared. She descended the stairs, walking with grace and coldness, as if angered by something. She looked at Nafisa with suspicion and then said in a sharp tone, "You're late." Nafisa was slightly surprised, hastily explaining, "Madam, I finished the work 2 days ago, but I thought you would send someone to collect the clothes. When no one came, I brought them myself." The landowner's wife did not respond, only glanced at Nafisa with an irritated look. She wore a deep red sari, and heavy jewelry hung around her neck, sparkling faintly in the dim light of the mansion. An oppressive silence filled the space as Nafisa waited, her heart full of anxiety. After a long silence, the landowner's wife spoke again, with a stern yet slightly mocking tone, "Next time, don't make me wait so long. If you're not careful, your work will no longer be in demand." Nafisa bowed her head, not daring to reply. She was used to the landowner's cold demeanor, but this time, her gaze made Nafisa feel an odd fear, as if something was wrong, as if something bad was about to happen. But she said nothing and stood there silently, waiting. The landowner's wife then turned away without a word of thanks. As Nafisa turned to leave, an odd sound echoed from behind her. Nafisa spun around but saw no one. Only a strange shadow moved quickly across the wall, like a spirit lurking in the darkness. A sudden chill made her shiver, and an overwhelming sense of unease flooded her heart. As Nafisa hurried along the path, the darkness closed in around her. Although there was dim light from nearby houses, the air remained cold and desolate. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind blew through, disheveling her long hair and scattering dry leaves across the ground. Nafisa couldn't shake the feeling of worry and dread that clung to her. She felt as though someone was following her, but whenever she looked back, there was only impenetrable darkness. When she was almost home, a strange sound came from behind her. It wasn't the wind, it was footsteps. Nafisa stopped, her heart racing. She didn't dare look back, fearing that the shadow she sensed might be something far worse than she imagined. Her hands were ice cold, and her heart thudded in her chest. Suddenly, a voice echoed from behind, soft and mysterious, "You don't have to be afraid." Nafisa turned, her eyes wide, but saw no one. The road was empty, with only the faint light of the moon casting shadows on the ground. The feeling of fear pushed her to walk faster toward home. Each step felt like a force driving her forward, and she just wanted to reach home safely. Finally, when she stepped inside her house, Nafisa sighed in relief. But what was strange was that when she looked into her father's eyes, there was a look of worry on his face. "What's wrong, Nafisa?" he asked, his voice full of concern. Nafisa reluctantly recounted the strange events at the landowner's house, the odd silence, the unsettling feelings she couldn't explain. Her father listened, sighed softly, and then looked at her with deep concern. "Don't you know? Every place has its ghosts, its unsettled spirits. Sometimes, these spirits are not evil, but they have their own ways of contacting us," her father said in a raspy voice due to his age. Nafisa felt a chill from her father's words, as if he were speaking of something very serious. Yet, she didn't ask more. She didn't understand everything he said, and all she wanted was to forget the eerie feelings she had that night. That night, Nafisa lay in bed, unable to sleep. She thought about the strange man she had helped the night before. His face remained vivid in her mind, his sharp green eyes, his skin glowing like jade, and the way he looked at her, not like a stranger, but like someone she had known for a long time. She remembered his words when he entered her house, "I will stay here until I am better." But what else? His story seemed so strange, and the mystery surrounding him made it impossible for Nafisa to stop thinking. Why did he have to hide like that? And why did he seem to want to hide a secret? The question kept repeating in her mind, but she couldn't find the answer. She knew there was something unusual about this man, and she couldn't explain why she felt such a strange connection to him, even though they had only met once. Suddenly, Nafisa sat up, her eyes wide open. She could feel a presence in her room, something she couldn't see, but she could sense clearly. The entire room had suddenly become eerily quiet, as if everything had stopped. She listened more closely and heard a very faint sound, like footsteps lightly brushing against the hard floor. The feeling of fear engulfed her, and she couldn't breathe. Then, suddenly, the footsteps stopped. Nafisa felt a chill run through her. She couldn't move, couldn't speak. Everything around her became dark and blurry. She heard a voice echo in the silent space, a voice very soft, but strangely clear. "Don't be afraid. I won't harm you." Nafisa's heart tightened. She shuddered, but then, unexpectedly, a sense of calm filled her. This feeling wasn't like the fear she had felt earlier, it was something very strange, as if she was being protected by someone. She slowly turned around, and in the dim light of the room, she saw a faint figure of a man standing just a few steps away from her. The figure didn't move, just stood still, gazing at her intently. "This place is no longer safe," the man said, his voice deep and full of authority. "You've been drawn into something unavoidable. But you can help resolve it, if you wish." His story was like a whisper in the dark, sending a chill down Nafisa's spine. She realized that she was no longer just an outsider. She stood in the middle of a battle between souls, a battle she never intended to be part of. But there was one thing that was becoming clear to her: he was turning to her for help, and perhaps, she was the one who would help him fulfill his vow. "Can you help me?" he asked, his gaze no longer cold, but instead filled with a deep pleading. "You saved me once, and now I need you to save me again." If you're still watching this video and want to help Nafisa gather the strength to overcome her fear, please comment the number 8 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I highly recommend you do and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. Your support helps us continue creating great content to inform and inspire you. Nafisa sat silently on her bed, her eyes still fixed on the man standing in the darkness, as if he was an inseparable part of the night. Every word he spoke echoed in her mind, like a relentless echo, haunting her over and over again. She didn't know what to do. How could she trust what he said? How could she accept that the man she had saved was not an ordinary man, but a strange creature, a shape-shifting serpent, capable of living through centuries? She couldn't deny that there was a strange connection between her and him. Even though they had only met once, it felt as though she had known him for a very long time. She remembered his deep, forest green eyes, as though they held secrets that could never be told. The feeling of worry and unease continued to envelop her, but at the same time, a part of her felt a strange urge, as if she had been destined to be part of the story he was telling. "I need you to help me find what I've lost," his voice came again, cutting through Nafisa's thoughts. "You may not believe me, but I don't have much time. My vengeance can't wait any longer." Nafisa felt her heart race. She looked into his eyes, a dark gaze but one filled with pleading, not with empty words, but an invitation to a dangerous journey that she couldn't turn away from. She didn't fully understand everything, but a part of her knew that whether she wanted to or not, she had been pulled into this story. "I don't know what to do. I'm just a seamstress, an ordinary person," she said, her voice full of uncertainty. "Why me? I can't help you with revenge." He took another step closer to her, close enough that Nafisa could feel his breath. The scent of earth and wild forests passed by, making her feel both afraid and mesmerized. "You can, because you saved me. And because I saw something in your eyes that I've never seen in anyone else. A compassion, an understanding you haven't realized. Your hands saved my life once, and now, I will need them to save me once again." His words made it impossible for Nafisa to turn back. She could refuse, but deep inside, she knew that there was a pull that she couldn't escape. He was speaking of a debt that had not yet been repaid, and she was part of it. The secrets he carried could not be left in the dark. It was time for the dark past to step into the light. "But how can I help you?" Nafisa asked, her hands tightening into fists. "I don't know anything about the things you're talking about. The serpents, the curses, they're just stories my father told me. How can I face this?" He stood still for a moment, then sighed softly. "The curse is not a fantasy. It has existed for a long time. And now, it has returned, threatening everything I love. I can't do it alone. I need your help, and only you can help me resolve it all." Nafisa felt a cold wave wash over her body. Every word he spoke seemed to carve into her the dark truth she could not escape. This was a battle she couldn't ignore, a battle between souls, between the past and the present, between life and death. "I will help you," she said, though her heart still held many unanswered questions. But as these words left her mouth, Nafisa felt that a part of her had changed forever. A promise had been made, and a journey had begun. With that decision, the darkness seemed to grow thicker, as if Nafisa's world was shifting, becoming a murky swamp of things she could not fully understand. She didn't know if she could fulfill what the man asked, but she knew she had no other choice. Her life, her father's, and her entire village's fate had now been swept into an inevitable vortex. Nafisa couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned in bed, listening to the wind howling outside her window, the rustling of leaves like whispers from a world she didn't fully comprehend. Though her eyes were heavy, her mind kept turning. Every image, every word from the man echoed in her mind. He wasn't ordinary, and she couldn't stop thinking about what he said, about the curse, the painful past, and the revenge he was seeking. In the darkness, Nafisa felt as if she were standing between two worlds, one of peace and daily life, and another, dark, full of danger and restless spirits. But now, she knew she couldn't turn back. She had entered this battle, even though she didn't know what she would face. As dawn approached, Nafisa decided she could no longer delay. She rose from her bed, pulled back the curtains, and looked outside. The scene outside was still, as if nothing had changed. She knew she had to act, and act now. The vengeance the man spoke of wasn't trivial. She could feel the obsession, the anguish in every word he spoke. It wasn't just a personal revenge, but perhaps the awakening of past ghosts, spirits that couldn't find rest. Nafisa turned to look at her father, lying on the bed, his face damp with sweat. She sighed, her eyes heavy, as if a burden had been placed on her shoulders. Though she didn't want to worry him, she understood that if she didn't do something now, everything could spiral out of control. Before leaving, she carefully passed by her younger brother Suhail's room, where he was peacefully asleep. She couldn't help but worry for him. The shadow of the strange man still lingered in her mind. But Nafisa knew there was no other choice. She had to continue walking. When she stepped outside the house, the first light of dawn was just breaking. Nafisa felt the weak rays of the sun touch her skin, but they couldn't chase away the fear in her heart. She walked along the narrow path leading out of the village, the place where she had first met the man. The road was deserted, no one was around. It felt like everything was falling into a deadly silence. She tried to walk faster, though her legs felt heavy. The further she went, the more she felt like she was entering a different realm. The realm he had spoken of, a world where there was no distinction between life and death, between humans and mystical creatures. Nafisa knew she couldn't turn back. She had heard his words, and everything now seemed tightly connected. Her actions today weren't just for him, but for her family, for the life she had always known. Eventually, Nafisa reached the place, a dilapidated house hidden within the dark forest. This place was unlike any she had ever seen, even though she had lived her whole life in the village. She looked around, feeling like a lost soul in a foreign world. The door of the house was slightly ajar, as if waiting for her. Nafisa walked in without hesitation. Inside, there was no one, only the heavy, oppressive air. She felt like everything had stopped, like a still life painting that no one could change. Then, from the shadows inside the house, she heard a noise. A soft sigh, followed by a gentle voice, "Finally, you've come." Nafisa jumped, turning around. The man was standing right behind her, his eyes glowing in the dark like green flames. Though his face remained the same, in his eyes, Nafisa saw determination and an intense desire. "I need you to help me do one thing. This will not only affect me but everything you hold dear." Nafisa didn't respond immediately. She knew she had come too far, that there was no turning back now. Whatever he asked, no matter how dangerous, she understood there was no other way. His revenge had pulled her into this battle, and now, she couldn't stop. I will help you, she said, her voice firm, though fear still surged within her. But I need to know everything. I can't follow you blindly without understanding why. The man smiled, his eyes softening. That's what I need, Nafissa. To seek vengeance, you need to understand my past. And when you learn the truth, you'll understand why I can't stop. Nafissa felt an overwhelming force from his words. A part of her wanted to turn away, to run from all of this, but another part of her couldn't do that. She couldn't abandon this man, the one she felt a strange connection to. No matter how afraid she was, she knew she had already fallen deep into the story, and there was no turning back. But I still don't understand. Why me? Nafissa asked, her voice ringing out in the darkness like a plea for an answer. I'm just a poor seamstress. I don't have any power to help you accomplish this. The man looked at her, his gaze no longer sharp and full of anger, but instead calm, as though he was seeing something in her eyes that she had yet to realize. Your hands saved me once. And those hands, along with your heart, are exactly what I need to fulfill my vow. You're not just a seamstress. You're the only one who can help me settle this debt. His words echoed in Nafissa's mind, making it impossible to deny the strange feeling she had when she first saved him. These words were a powerful compulsion, one she couldn't resist. She could feel that her life had changed forever from that moment, and she couldn't stop now. The man stepped closer to her, slowly but with determination. You don't have to fight me, Nafissa. You just need to help me find the remaining souls, those who took everything from me, and resolve it all. I can't do it alone. Together, we can free the trapped souls, but we can also end this once and for all. Nafissa stood there, enveloped in the heavy silence. What he said wasn't just simple words. It was a battle, not only against those who had wronged him but against invisible forces, souls that hadn't found peace, and the ghosts of the past coming back. She knew that if she agreed, it wouldn't just be a dangerous journey, but she would have to face dark secrets she had never imagined. I will help you, Nafissa said, her voice more resolute than ever. But I need to know more clearly what I have to do. I can't do this based on your words alone. You have to tell me everything. The man nodded, his expression serious. All right. I'll tell you. But be prepared, Nafissa. We won't stop until everything is resolved. The sunlight had gradually faded, giving way to the long shadows of night that enveloped the old house where Nafissa stood. Everything in this space seemed to be suspended, like a vivid painting trapped in silence and mystery. She could feel the cold emanating from the walls, as if they held curses yet to be broken, souls yet to be freed. The man standing before Nafissa remained silent, his eyes never leaving her. A part of her, despite the fear, couldn't help but feel the strange pull and fascination in his presence. Something was very different, very deep, as if he wasn't human but a creature that transcended time and space, carrying mysteries she couldn't comprehend. But it was precisely these mysteries that compelled her, pulling her into a journey she couldn't turn away from. We need to leave now, he spoke, his voice low and hoarse. Time is running out. If we don't act now, everything will fall into the hands of those who wronged me. Nafissa felt a chill run down her spine, but she couldn't back down. Though she didn't fully understand everything, her resolve had solidified. She nodded, even though her mind was still full of unanswered questions. Where are we going? She asked, her voice soft but serious. We have to find the traces of those souls, he replied. They will leave signs, marks that only someone like me can sense. And you, Nafissa, will help me. As they stepped out of the house, Nafissa looked around, unable to shake the loneliness and coldness of this world. Every step they took seemed heavier, as though they were walking into a dead end. But the man beside her showed no sign of hesitation. He walked straight ahead, his eyes still vigilant and focused. The night sky enveloped everything, with only the dim light of distant stars casting a faint glow, creating an eerie, cold atmosphere. Nafissa felt like she was stepping into a strange dream, a place where anything could happen. She didn't know what they would face, but one thing was certain: she couldn't remain on the sidelines of this battle. This was her fate, and she had to face it. The journey stretched through narrow paths, cutting through dark fields, until they reached a dense forest. The man led Nafissa through rugged trails, the thick canopy blocking the only light they had, the faint glow of distant stars. The air grew even quieter, and Nafissa felt as if she was entering another world, one she had never known. She tried to grasp what was happening, but her thoughts were a whirlwind. Each step they took was a step into uncertainty. Never had she imagined that her life would change so quickly, and now, she couldn't turn back. Finally, after what felt like a long time, they stopped in front of an ancient temple, covered in green moss and intertwined branches. The temple's door was damaged but still retained an imposing and mysterious air. The man looked at the temple, his expression serious. "We're here," he said, his eyes glimmering in the dark. "This place holds the traces of the remaining souls." Nafissa felt the tension rise. She looked at the temple, a sense of unease bubbling up inside her. "But what will we do here?" she asked, her voice soft but laced with worry. "We'll look for their signs," he replied, his voice low, as if he had prepared for this moment long ago. "The souls of those who committed the crimes will leave their marks. And once we find them, we won't have to be afraid anymore." Nafissa didn't know what to say. She looked at the temple with a strange feeling, as though something dark was waiting for them inside. She moved toward the door, her heart full of fear, but she couldn't stop. There was only one way forward, into the unknown. They stepped into the temple, the interior pitch black, with only the faint light from cracks in the stone walls illuminating the space. Nafissa felt like she was entering a different realm, where time seemed to stop. The walls were covered in moss and dust, but there was an unseen, mystical force she couldn't fully understand. She could sense the presence of something invisible, a force that seemed to be watching their every move. "We need to search carefully," the man said, his gaze never leaving the hidden corners of the temple. "The signs won't be easy to see. But you'll recognize them. You'll know when you see them." If you're still watching this video and want to help Nafissa free the trapped souls, please comment number 9 below to let me know you're here, and if you haven't subscribed yet, I highly recommend you do, and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support helps us continue creating great content to inform and inspire you. The man led the way, calm and confident, not stopping as he moved deeper into the temple. The only light came from the faint rays filtering through the small cracks in the stone, casting strange shadows on the ground, like invisible monsters creeping out from the darkness. Nafissa had to summon all her strength to follow him, although inside, the fear grew stronger with each step, as if something was silently surrounding her. They moved deeper, until the light from outside was almost entirely gone. From ahead, Nafissa felt a shiver run through her, as though an unexplainable force was enveloping them. Suddenly, she stopped. A strange sensation washed over her, as though someone, or something, was watching her from the darkness, causing her feet to freeze in place. Do you feel something's wrong?" Nafissa asked, her voice tight. The man stopped, turned to look at her with a stern expression. "You've sensed it, haven't you?" he asked, his voice low, as if he already knew what was about to happen. Nafissa nodded, her heart pounding. "There's something here. I feel like we're being watched." He smiled faintly, but the smile was far from comforting. "Yes, exactly. This is where the restless souls hide. They don't want us to get close, but we must continue. If we don't, we'll never finish what we've come to do." The air in the temple grew even more ominously silent. Each step they took, every movement, had to be made with absolute caution. Nafissa could feel the unseen eyes of the souls following them, the presence of invisible forces, powerful yet unseen, like a thick fog enveloping everything, making everything uncertain and dangerous. Suddenly, the man stopped in front of a large stone wall. On it, ancient symbols were etched deep into the stone, symbols that Nafissa had never seen before. The wall seemed to vibrate lightly, as if it were alive, reacting to their presence. "These are the signs," the man said, pointing to the symbols on the wall. "These souls left their marks here. They can't hide forever." Nafissa looked at the symbols, feeling a chill radiating from them. There was something strange in those drawings, the lines and images making her shudder. She couldn't explain why, but she could sense a strong presence behind those symbols, as if creatures were waiting for their release. "What do we do next?" Nafissa asked, unable to hide the anxiety in her voice. The man slowly turned back to look at her, his gaze filled with resolve. "We will use your power to unlock this door. These symbols can't be opened by normal means. They can only be unlocked by those connected to the world of spirits. You are the key." Nafissa felt a cold wave running down her spine as she heard these words. She looked at the wall again, then turned to the man. "But I don't understand. I'm just a seamstress. How can I help you unlock these symbols?" He smiled coldly. "You saved me once, Nafissa. That's a sign that you have a special ability that you haven't realized. These symbols, they react to you, to your soul." The understanding in his eyes seemed to unlock the thoughts in Nafissa's mind. She recalled the strange feeling she had when saving this man, a sensation as if she had known him for a very long time, as if their souls had once shared a deep connection. Maybe this wasn't just a coincidence. Perhaps she truly had a larger role to play in this story. She took a deep breath and stepped toward the stone wall. When her hand touched the symbols, she felt an electric current rush through her, and instantly, the space around her seemed to vanish. An invisible force enveloped her, and when she opened her eyes, everything around her had changed. The dark temple, with its sturdy walls, now seemed like an open space, bathed in a dim, ethereal light, as if a different world was unfolding before her. Faint figures began to appear in the space, the souls of the departed, the wounds of the past starting to be revealed. "You've done it," the man said, his voice echoing in this ethereal space. "Now, we can begin the final journey." It felt as if the world around Nafissa had completely shifted, as if the stone wall she had just touched had opened a door into another world. She could sense the presence of souls, memories long buried, slowly awakening. The dim light radiated from the cracks in the wall, creating ghostly shadows that moved through the space. Everything seemed unreal, as if she were in the middle of a dream filled with strange figures. "We must go now," the man's voice rang out, soft but resolute. "This is the only path to vengeance. And also the path to free these souls." Nafissa felt a new resolve in her heart, though still confused and frightened. The souls, the memories of the past, all seemed to want to tell her something that she couldn't fully understand. She turned to look at the man, the one she didn't know whether he was human or not, the one who had led her here, into this place, into a world that didn't belong to her. "What do you want me to do now?" Nafisa asked, her voice quiet but sure. She knew she couldn't back down. No matter how scared she was, she had to face this. The man didn't answer immediately, but looked around, as if evaluating the situation. After a long pause, he turned back to Nafisa, his gaze firm. "We need to find the locations of those souls. The ones who caused this pain, the ones who killed Rupa and others like her, they are trapped in this world, unable to pass on, unable to escape punishment." Nafisa felt a chill run down her spine as she heard these words. She couldn't imagine the horror of the souls trapped in this world. But part of her understood that if nothing was done, these souls would never find peace, and the vengeance would continue to spread, like an inescapable whirlpool. She took a deep breath and followed the man, stepping into the darkness. The whole space seemed to become more obscure, and there was no sign of the light from outside. Everything was shrouded in an eerie silence, with only the sound of their footsteps echoing in the stillness. They went deeper into the temple, and Nafisa could sense a strange power. Something was waiting for them ahead, something that could change everything. She couldn't explain the feeling, but it was intense, as if the whole world was waiting to explode. Suddenly, the man stopped. "We've arrived," he said, his voice tinged with tension. "Here, the souls are waiting." Nafisa looked around, and suddenly, she felt as though she were standing in a completely different space. Faint figures, souls whispering in the air, were surrounding them. She couldn't clearly see their faces, but the cold and ominous presence was spreading in this space. One of the souls came closer, its form faint, like a ghost with no clear shape. It looked at Nafisa with eyes full of suffering and hatred, then spoke in a hoarse voice, as if it had been imprisoned for centuries. "How can you help us?" the soul asked, its voice filled with resentment. "We have been trapped for too long. We cannot pass on without help." Nafisa felt a wave of fear rise in her heart, but she knew she couldn't give up. She couldn't turn back. I will help you," she said, her voice soft but full of determination. "But I need to know everything. What have you suffered? Why can't you be reborn?" The soul looked at her, and in its eyes, Nafisa saw both suffering and fury. "We were condemned for the crimes of those who killed us. Those souls still exist, and they will continue to torment us until we have our vengeance." Nafisa could feel the darkness in the soul's words, and she understood that she wasn't just facing suffering souls, but those filled with hatred and unable to rest. The curses still remained, and those who committed these crimes would never escape punishment. She looked at the man beside her, his gaze filled with resolve. "This is the moment. We can't hesitate any longer. If we don't do this now, it will never end." The atmosphere in the temple grew heavier, as if an invisible force was pulling Nafisa and the man deeper into this dark space. The souls circled around them, their forms still hazy, like clouds that would never disperse, but Nafisa could feel their pain and anger radiating from them. These ghosts were not peaceful souls, they were souls trapped in resentment, imprisoned by curses and an unending thirst for revenge. Every soul Nafisa saw, though its form was unclear, carried with it an invisible sense of unease. She could feel their sharp, piercing gazes, as if they were watching her every step, seeking forgiveness or release, but unable to break free from their own hatred. They cannot rest. They are imprisoned by their past, and we are the only ones who can set them free, the man said, his eyes colder and more resolute than ever. "But to release them, you must do what I cannot. You must face yourself, and the things you have never considered. Nafissa looked at the man, feeling his words as a call, a summons for sacrifice. She knew that not only the souls of the dead were being pulled into this journey, but her own soul as well. Even though she didn't want to face these truths, she knew she couldn't turn back. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice serious and firm. Nafissa didn't answer immediately. She took a deep breath, trying to calm herself in the midst of this dark and tense space. The anxiety within her kept growing, but she knew that she had no other choice. This was the path she had chosen, and she would go to the end, even if it led her to horrors she couldn't yet imagine. "I'm ready," she said, her voice no longer trembling. She had made her decision. The man nodded, his eyes gleaming with a strange light. "Good. Follow me." He led her deeper into the temple, where the atmosphere grew even darker. The souls gathered around them, like invisible shadows. Nafissa felt like she was walking into a bottomless pit, a place with no way back. Even if she wanted to turn back, she couldn't. She could only keep moving forward, facing whatever awaited her. They reached a part of the temple where there was a large stone table, strange marks on its surface, symbols that Nafissa couldn't understand. The souls around them began to gather around the table, their eyes filled with hatred and resentment, as if they were waiting for a release they couldn't find on their own. "This is where everything will end," the man said, his eyes deep, as though looking into a reality Nafissa couldn't see. "You must make a choice. Your decision will determine all our fates." Nafissa looked at the stone table, where the ancient symbols began to glow in the darkness. She didn't fully understand everything, but the strange sensation within her still lingered, as if an invisible presence was affecting every fiber of her being. What should she do now? "What do you feel?" the man asked, his voice gentle but full of pressure. "Can you sense it?" Nafissa felt a cold rush down her spine as she placed her hand on the stone table. Immediately, the symbols on the table began to glow, as if something were coming to life. The sensation felt like a connection between her and these souls, a bond she couldn't explain. Every drawing, every mark seemed to react to her, as though they were waiting for some signal to be released. "They are calling to you," the man whispered. "These souls are calling to you." Nafissa felt the tension rise in her heart. She knew this was the most crucial moment in her life. She had to make a decision. Could she forgive the souls trapped in resentment and revenge, or would she continue down the path of vengeance the man had led her on? The anxiety and fear within her kept growing. But as she looked at the souls surrounding her, she understood that vengeance would never bring peace. Resentment only caused these souls to suffer more, wandering in the darkness, never finding release. Nafissa took a deep breath, then placed her hand on the glowing symbols. She felt a powerful current rush through her body, as if the whole world was focusing on her. "I choose release," she said, her voice strong but full of emotion. "I will free you. No revenge in this world can bring true peace." With these words, the light from the symbols on the stone table erupted, illuminating the entire dark space. The souls around them began to fade away, as if the resentment had been erased, and the ghosts no longer lingered in the darkness. Nafissa felt a strange sense of relief, as if a part of her had been freed. She knew she had made the right choice, that no vengeance could bring true peace. And as the light from the ancient symbols gradually faded, Nafissa turned to look at the man beside her, the one who had led her on this journey. He didn't say anything, only smiled gently. "You did the right thing," he said. "Now, it's all over." Looking at him, Nafissa realized that he was no longer a cold creature, no longer a shadow of vengeance. His eyes had changed, no longer filled with resolve, hatred, or the burden of the past, but with a softness, as if he had found something important that he had been searching for all along. "You did it," he said, his voice full of respect and gentleness. "You freed not only them but also yourself. And now, everything will begin anew from here." Nafissa looked at the man, her eyes filled with confusion. She no longer recognized the man she had first met, a man full of anger, with a heart only for revenge. Now, he stood before her like an ordinary man, someone freed from the ghost of his past. "You're not a snake anymore?" Nafissa asked, uncertain, but her heart was filled with curiosity. He smiled gently, his eyes lighting up. "I am not the snake anymore. I am a free soul. What I have done, the revenge, the killing, the hatred, it is all over. I am no longer the shadow of vengeance. I am someone who has been liberated." Nafissa felt a great change in him, as if he had gone through a long, painful journey to finally find peace. She realized that although he was no longer the shape-shifting serpent he once was, it was the forgiveness she had brought to him that mattered most. She had helped him free himself. "So, what will we do now?" Nafissa asked, a question she couldn't avoid. Though she had helped him break free from his past, what would their future hold? "We will live," he said, his voice calm but meaningful. "We will live like ordinary people, no longer haunted by the ghosts of the past. We will start again, from the beginning." Nafissa felt a warmth spread through her heart. She looked at him, and in that moment, all fear and uncertainty about the future seemed to disappear. She understood that this path was not only his, but also hers. She had changed, and the souls she helped free had also changed, alongside her. The man stepped closer to Nafissa, once again his gaze softening. "You've taught me an important lesson. It's not revenge, but forgiveness and liberation that truly bring peace." Nafissa said nothing, only nodded lightly. She felt a connection between them, a bond that didn't need any more words. She had freed him, but at the same time, she had also freed herself. She was no longer haunted by questions or fears. Standing in the ancient temple, the light from the symbols on the stone table gradually faded, as if everything was returning to the quietude it had once known. She looked back one last time, knowing she would never forget this journey. A journey that wasn't just a battle between life and death, but also a battle to seek forgiveness, to free souls, and most importantly, to free herself. "So, can we go outside now?" Nafissa asked with a gentle smile, feeling a freedom she had never known before. He nodded, his smile also gentle. "Let's go. It's all over now. We will live, and we will find better things ahead." Together, they walked out of the ancient temple, leaving behind the ghosts of the past and the curses that had been lifted. The light from the sun began to shine, warming the space around them. She knew that, though many challenges lay ahead, she had overcome the most difficult path of her life. And from now on, Nafissa's life would never be the same. She had found freedom, not only for the souls but also for herself. In the Sutra of Earth Store Bodhisattva, we learn that every soul can become trapped in the cycles of suffering and endurance due to unresolved actions. These souls are affected by their past deeds, and only when they realize the truth about themselves and repent can they escape the realm of suffering and move toward a better future. The story in our video reflects this teaching, as Nafissa and the man confront souls trapped in the past, consumed by resentment and hatred. The act of liberating these souls, as well as choosing forgiveness and abandoning vengeance, becomes the key to freeing both their souls and Nafissa's. From this, The first lesson we learn is forgiveness and liberation. Forgiveness not only frees others, but it also frees us. When we refuse to forgive others or ourselves, we become trapped in a cycle of anger and suffering, unable to move forward. The Sutra of Earth Store Bodhisattva teaches us that forgiveness is the key to escaping suffering and finding peace. Acts of kindness, every action has an impact. The story shows that acts of compassion and kindness can change not just our current circumstances but also liberate souls trapped in hatred. A single act of goodness can create significant change, not only for ourselves but for others around us. Always live with compassion and understanding. Confronting the past for liberation. When we face the wounds of the past, rather than avoiding or denying them, we find healing. Nafisa's story, as well as the soul's, shows that only when we understand the cause of our suffering can we find the path to liberation. Thank you for joining us today. We would love to hear from you, so feel free to leave a comment below and share one thing you learned today. How will you apply this lesson in your life? Your thoughts are very important to us, and reading your comments gives us motivation and encouragement. If you liked this video and found it helpful, please like, subscribe, and share your support. This will help us continue to create great content to inform and inspire you. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.